Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson contained in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 737, The Moon Was But a Chin of Gold. What poet can come up with a first line like that? Now, as we said in our previous study of 736, Emily, that tribute poem to the month of March, Emily is a great lover of nature. And in this poem, she'll be playing around with the moon. This is the fourth poem about the moon. You'll already remember our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. Hopefully you've already worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 736 poems. As we said, we just finished with 736, have any like myself. And if you've done that reading, you will remember poems 429, 504, and 629. All of those were tribute poems to the moon or referencing the moon in some profound way. By the way, when this one was published in 1896, it was actually titled The Moon. Emily herself never doing that. One scholar has called this a hymn to the brilliance of the moon. Now, let's point out really quickly at 2b the personification game that Emily will play. First of all, the moon and its physical features, like a body, like a female body, and then to her garments and what she wears. The moon was but a chin of gold a night or two ago, and now she turns her perfect face upon the world below. Her forehead is of amplest blonde, her cheek a beryl hue, her eye unto the summer dew, the likeliest I have known. Her lips of amber never part, but what must be the smile upon her friend she could confer, were such her silver will. And what a privilege to be but the remotest star, for certainty she take her way beside your palace door. Her bonnet is the firmament, the universe her shoe, the stars, the trinkets at her belt, her dimities of blue. You will remember dimities from our earlier study of 716. As old exactly as the world. Dimities as old exactly as the world. You'll also remember when we did 278 that we commented that Emily will see broadcloth as male, kind of male cloth, and then female cloth for her muslin, organdy, and dimity, right? So here we go. We've got the moon as female and the chin of gold. I mean, the next time, and this is what Shelley said in defense of poetry, this is what great poets do. They make you see the observable, the obvious in a brand new way. The next time you guys look at the moon and it's just a slice of it, see the chin of gold. A night or two ago, she says, the immediacy of the poem. And now, she says, she turns her perfect face, that is to say now the perfect moon, upon the world below. The rhythms here are beautiful. Everything about this is lovely. And now notice the repetition of her forehead, now pointing out different parts of the face of this female moon, this feminine moon. Amplest blonde, her cheek a beryl hewn. You'll remember beryl from 161. Her eye under the summer dew, the likeliest I have known. This is again this referencing to the different facets of the face of the moon. Her lips of amber never part, but what must be the smile upon her friend she could confer, were such her silver will. The smiling moon. The moon, of course, we think of Homer, we think of Shakespeare, we think of all the great poets and writers that she loved who played games just like this. And what a privilege, she says, to be but the remotest star, for certainty she take her way beside your palace door. By the way, notice this immediacy of your. Again, we call our series Chats with Emily for a number of reasons. In other words, all the way, the moon and the moon beam, the shining of the moon, will shine all the way down to you and to your palace door, she says. And now we go from her physical referencing to what she wears, and we'll start with the bonnet. The bonnet is the firmament. Notice now we're switching to garments. The universe, her shoe, and the stars, the trinkets at her belt. In other words, there's this majesty. I think, the heavens declare the glory of God, the book of Psalms says in her King James Bible that she loves so much, and she's obviously playing the game. Finally, she ends with dimities, that decorative cotton cloth that's puckered of blue. The point here, I think, is simply that nature for her is perfect. It is amazing, and the personification at 2b makes it accessible for her. At 3A, the other moon poems, we already studied them, 429, 504, and 629. Finally, at 3B, the next time you look at the moon, will you be thinking about this poem? Do you love the moon? Is it for you a wonderful part of nature? Thank you.